Yep. Hi, Ed.
Hi,
This
we're
one?
waiting for another board member to arrive.
Oh, okay.
I'll get back to you.
All right, thanks.
Right away. No, we're fine.
Emergency in every area of my life.
We can't start the board meeting till 7, so it's no big deal.
Okay.
Meetings will start in about 2 minutes.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So you
Why don't we call the meeting to order Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and students. Thank you for coming tonight. We're convening a hearing to discuss the proposed closure of the Richboro Middle School. Ms. Rice, would you roll call, please?
Mrs. Brooks?
Mrs. Brooks is
Here.
There she is.
Mr. Block?
Here.
Can you hear me? I said here.
Yeah, I heard you. Mr. Bialik?
Mr. Bialik will be arriving a little later.
Dr. Foster?
Dr. Foster is absent.
Mr. Grupp?
Mr. Grupp is on a long scheduled family trip.
Mrs. McKessie?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
Mrs. Thomas will be arriving shortly.
Dr. Thorwart?
Here.
And Mr. Tate?
Here. We'll begin with our solicitor, Rob Cox, who will explain the purpose of this hearing. Please, sir.
Mr. Tate, my understanding is that the administration is prepared to present a plan to the school board for the closure, the potential closure of Richboro Middle School. And so the Board of School Directors has broad authority to close one or more schools within its school district, but it's required to follow a statutory process. And that statutory process essentially begins with what Section 780 of the school code requires, which is a public hearing for the outline of the plan to be presented and for the public to present comment. Once that hearing occurs, as is occurring tonight, the board then has a 3-month period during which it essentially has to take no action on the plan that's presented to it. So there is a 3-month waiting period. from the time of the public hearing, which is occurring tonight, until the time at which the board can vote on the plan presented to it. And so basically the purpose of tonight's hearing is to meet Section 780 of the school code, the 3-month waiting period following a public hearing. And so tonight there will be discussion of the proposed closure of Richboro Middle School. There will be a plan, as I understand, presented, the outline of a plan presented to the board, an opportunity for the public to comment regarding the proposed closure of Richboro Middle School, an opportunity for board comment, and then essentially a 3-month waiting period prior to a board vote on that proposed closure. So that's the purpose of tonight's hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Dr. Pridge?
Thank you, Mr. Tate. Good evening, members of the board and members of the community. And it is my pleasure to welcome everyone to our public hearing on the proposed closure of Richboro Middle School. As I believe everyone here knows and everyone watching at home knows, and we're not advancing. Here we go. Richboro Middle School has been recommended for the school closing process. And if approved, the closing would be effective as of June 30th, 2018, meaning that it would go into effect for the 2018-19 school year. So what brings us here this evening, as Mr. Cox said, is that this is one step in the school closure process. It is a requirement by the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and this would begin then a 3-month waiting process before the board is able to take any votes on this particular school closing. Before we go any further here this evening and really jump into our public comment portion, I do want to take important, appropriate time to say that Richboro Middle School is an incredibly important school building within the Council Rock School District, and it has been for over 5 decades now. Since 1964, Richboro Middle School has done an absolutely tremendous job of nurturing youth in this community, of educating youth in this community. We're exceptionally proud of that school community. We have many people who have attended that school, who still attend that school, who are extremely proud, who have taught, who still teach in that school, who are extremely proud, and they have every right to be. So while this evening, for legitimate reasons that we'll get into, we talk about this proposed school closure, what we don't want to get lost is all the excellence that has come from this particular school community, again, for over 5 decades now. And so I appreciate you bearing with us as we take a moment to pay homage to that. So again, there are reasons for this recommendation. They are legitimate, and we will talk about those. We will talk about trending enrollment numbers at the middle level, a history of board motions and approvals, next steps in this process, and then, of course, public comment here this evening to conclude this hearing. Now, reasons for the recommendation from a rationale standpoint, really it's twofold. The first piece is declining enrollment. The reality is that the capacity of the 3 middle schools that exist today significantly exceeds current and projected enrollments at the middle level. We'll take a closer look at enrollment on the next slide. The second piece to this are anticipated annual savings. We are in the process via closing Richboro Middle School of consolidating at the middle level from 3 schools to 2 schools, and that would save, again, on an annual basis, operating costs upwards of $1.6 million on an annual basis. You can see the exact figure on the slide. So again, that rationale really is twofold. Again, saying that we would take a closer look at enrollment, this is what enrollment from a longitudinal standpoint has looked like at the middle level. Taking a 15-year look dating back to the 2002-03 school year, you can see from then to now we are down 327 students. Over the first 10 years, it was a decline of 144 students, and then in the most recent 5 years, it is a drop of about another 180 students. Again, for a total decrease of 327 students, for a grand total today of 1,797 students across the existing 3 middle schools. And you can see them broken out by middle school there for the 2016-17 school year. Board motions. We have an important board motion that was made in November 2014. It begins by saying that the administration shall develop a long-term middle school plan that renovates Holland Middle School. It ends in boldface print by saying that it will include construction of a new Newtown Middle School, and in between, as you can see, 1 year prior to completion of those renovations, the administration shall present a plan to the board which proposes redistricting and evaluates the repurposing or sale of the Richboro Middle School property. So again, that's from November of 2014, so there was certainly full consideration of this process at that time. So that's part of the history, and then another part of the history was this past March 31st, when these plans became a bit more concrete, as the board approved the contractors, vendors, and other select professional services for both of those middle school projects, both of which are now underway, and upon their build out will be enough to satisfy the entirety of our 7th and 8th grade enrollment, with each school being designed to accommodate 950 students, or 1,900 total. And then in terms of next steps, once they are built out, we are anticipating an enrollment at the middle level, just taking simply a look at our current 5th and 6th grade enrollment. We are anticipating an enrollment in the 2018-19 school year of 1,708 middle level students. Again, that's simply taking a look at current 5th and 6th grade students. So that would be down approximately 89 students from our current numbers. Of course, we can have some movement, some attrition between now and then, but we're probably looking at a decrease from our current numbers to 2 years from now. So again, looking at approximately 1,708 students with a capacity of 1,900 students, that would put us at about 90% capacity across Holland and Newtown Middle Schools for the 2018-19 school year, should Richboro Middle School indeed close. So that is the proposed plan brought to you here this evening for consideration and certainly for public comment. So I will yield the floor at this time and turn it over, Mr. Tate, to you for public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fraser. Valuable context and information. We'll open the floor to public comment. Let me read the brief preface for public comment that we normally use during board meetings. Public comment is an opportunity for members of the public to address the board. We would ask that you limit your comments to no longer than 3 minutes. Please consider the fact that there may be young people, young children in the audience, or watching this broadcast live on CRTV when speaking. It is our goal to maintain a respectful, civil environment so that members of our community have an equal opportunity to address the board without interruption. While the board welcomes your ideas and will consider them in deliberating an issue, we may not respond to your comments or questions. Does anyone from the public wish to comment? When you get to the podium, please give us your name and your municipality.
I'm Maureen Petrie. I live in Richboro, Northampton Township. I've been involved with this for the past 3 years, going back even further than that. I think you all know I'm very disappointed in the closure. There's less opportunities for our kids in sports, government, music. And the decision, I feel, was made to close these schools and spend our money with really no concrete plans in place on how these schools are being filled and what's going to happen to the kids when they're going to the high schools. We also need to make sure that we have plans in place for the kids who will be there when the lights go out at Richboro Middle School, which are the existing sixth graders right now. And I know the endpoint vision is making sure that we're balancing the two high schools, north being the smaller population right now, south being the larger population, and the fact that we may not be able to run classes at north because of the lack of kids to sign up. My daughter's met 4 times now with her guidance counselor this year, and she's in south, and we cannot get her classes that she wants for next year because there's not enough kids signing up at south for these classes. So I think we have to look at this again from the big picture, making sure we have plans in place going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment? Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Victoria Black. I live in Ivyland, Northampton Township. I had written a letter to the board on April 4th, 2016 that said, "To whom this may concern, I write this letter as a Richboro Middle School and a Welch Elementary School parent. I have several concerns for the closing of Richboro Middle School. First of all, Richboro Middle School just celebrated 50 years in 2014 as a school. So much joy and celebration was had that year under speculation that the school may be closing. A year later, and not much discussion with the public, we are now told that the school will be closed. This decision was made, and I do not agree with, and I personally do not think that the school board notified the public enough of the agendas of closing this middle school. My concerns are as follows, just like they were back on April 4th, 2016. Number one, what school will the fellow students who usually attend Richboro Middle School go to? My son is in the split year. I'd like to know which middle school he'll be attending. Secondly, when my older son went to Richboro Middle School, he had a 45-minute car drive to get home. So how long is it going to take my second child? Third, what's going to happen to all of the teachers and staff that work at Richboro Middle School? 4, there's new development that's being built as we speak on Hatboro Road and Old Jacksonville Road. What happens when attendance goes up again in the future? I truly believe that closing Richboro Middle School should not be an option. How about all 3 of the schools get a facelift with the money that's going to be used to build a new one? I know that that's not going to happen. I know tonight I'm probably here just on wasted breath and wasted time, because I have a feeling you guys already decided what you're doing with that school. But you have small children who don't know what's going to happen when they go to middle school next year. Okay, my son's one of them, and he's not sure how things are going to be transferred over from Richboro Middle School to, per se, Holland Middle School. From what we've gathered is where he will be attending. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Danielle Walk, and I did not expect myself to be speaking this evening. I am in Churchville, Northampton County. So I moved here 8 years ago, Northeast Philly, born and bred. I'm a high school English teacher in the Philadelphia School District. So you see why I've moved. I love Philadelphia, rich history, but I wanted a little bit more for my kids. My oldest goes to Temple, second year, pre-med. Went to Richboro Middle School, Welsh, Richboro Middle School, and then South. A great time. And I'm very happy that she had the opportunity to go to Welsh. She only had a year and a half there. My youngest is in 5th grade currently at Welsh. She's in 5th grade. And she's a little sensitive one. She's my sensitive one. And she hears people talk about it. I don't talk about it to her. And when she does bring it up about switching from Richboro Middle School, which she's never seen, so what can she compare it against? I just tell her, you're going to do good no matter where you go, just to ease that. But that's a hard thing. My daughter is not stupid. She knows she's not going where her big sister went. She knows there's a change. So she might not directly be affected a lot more than someone who's going to be there for seventh grade and then have to switch for another year and then have to switch right after that for high school. So please, as an educator, I ask you to please keep these children in mind, their feelings. And now my daughter, who, if she needs to, she will be bused because I work early in the morning, and so does my husband. So now, instead of going to Richboro Middle School, which is only about 2.5, 3 miles away from me, she will now have to attend Holland Middle School, which is 5+ more miles, or the 8 to 9 miles away for Newtown Middle School. That's really concerning. She'll be 11 and 12 years old riding a bus for over an hour and some. That's a lot. Please keep our children in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to comment? Okay, if there's no one else, I'll open the floor to board comment. I'll say simply that, excuse me, some of the concerns that you all raised are concerns that we have discussed around this table and in small group meetings, and I assure you that we're very concerned about the well-being of students during the transition period and the well-being of staff. And it's those kinds of concerns we'll be discussing going forward in the master capital planning process. Our next meeting is March the 30th, and I invite you all to attend. If there are no further comments, we're adjourned. Thank you.
No, 7, it was advertised for 7. So 1 minute.
All right, we'll take a 1-minute recess.